Disclaimer: this content is intended for mature audiences only. Viewer discretion is advised. It was one of those quiet evenings, the kind where nothing seems special at first. The TV was on, casting a soft glow over the living room, and everyone had settled in after dinner. The air conditioner hummed low, a bowl of popcorn sat untouched on the table, and a faint smell of coffee still lingered from earlier. Everything seemed normal, until it wasn't. Al sat at the edge of the couch, his eyes casually drifting between the screen and the people around him. Across from him, his son-in-law, Mark, leaned back in the recliner, arms crossed, sipping on a cold soda. The two had always gotten along, friendly enough, sharing jokes here and there, but tonight, something felt different. The way Mark's gaze shifted, lingering just a second too long, was the first sign. It wasn't overt, but it was there, something unspoken. Eyal's wife, Dana, had just gone upstairs to take a call, leaving behind a curious silence. His daughter, Emily, was in the kitchen finishing up dishes. That's when it happened, soft, almost like a whisper carried by the flicker of the TV light. "You're so beautiful tonight," Mark said, his voice low, clear, and deliberate. Al turned slowly, uncertain if he'd heard right. His heart skipped, confusion tightening his chest. It wasn't just the words, it was the tone. The look in Mark's eyes wasn't one of innocent admiration. No, it held something deeper, something dangerous. There was a pause. A long one. Al stared at him, unsure if he should laugh it off, question it, or just let it go. But the look Mark gave wasn't playful, it was serious, intense. And in that second, something shifted in the room. The casual air was gone. What was once a normal family night began to feel like the first ripple in a much larger wave. Why would Mark say that? What did he mean? Was it just a weird compliment, or something more? Was there something building under the surface all along? This wasn't just a random moment. It felt like the start of something. Something hidden. Something that would change the way this family looked at each other forever. And in a house where everyone thought they knew each other so well, suddenly, things weren't as simple anymore. Secrets have a way of rising when you least expect them. And tonight, what began as a normal evening would soon twist into a tangle of emotions, unexpected feelings, and choices no one saw coming. What will Al do next? How will this night end? Or is it just beginning? Stay tuned. Al didn't respond right away. His hands rested still on his lap, but his mind was moving fast. Mark's words echoed in his head, "You're so beautiful tonight." Not just strange, personal. It wasn't the kind of thing a son-in-law said to his father-in-law under any normal circumstances. There was something underneath it, a tone, a pause, a look that felt like it wasn't meant to be ignored. Mark didn't seem uncomfortable after saying it either. He leaned back, took another slow sip of his drink, eyes drifting back to the TV as if nothing happened. But Al could feel it, that weird weight in the air, thick and unspoken. He glanced toward the stairs, hoping Dana would come back soon. Maybe she'd break the tension, shift the focus. But she didn't. Her voice echoed faintly upstairs, still on that call. Al tried to act normal, leaning forward to grab a handful of popcorn. "What did you say?" he asked, voice casual but tight. Mark smiled faintly. "Just saying, the lighting's good tonight. You've got a calm look about you." There it was again, carefully worded, just enough to keep things unclear. He didn't repeat the exact line, but the intention still hung in the space between them. This wasn't a joke, and it wasn't innocent. Al felt his skin prickle slightly, unsure what game Mark was playing. Emily stepped back into the room a moment later, drying her hands with a dish towel. She smiled at both of them, oblivious to the strange current she had just walked into. "You two still watching that old thriller?" "I've seen this ending like 3 times," she laughed, walking toward the couch. Mark's eyes shifted to her briefly, then right back to Al's, subtle, fast, but noticeable. It made Al's stomach twist. Was this a test? A challenge? Or was he imagining it all? The room felt tighter now, like the walls had quietly moved in. Al's thoughts ran in loops. How long had this been going on? Had he missed signs? Why tonight? Why now? But he didn't ask any of that. He just smiled, nodded at Emily, and reached for the remote. Yeah, we're just watching, he said, voice calm on the surface. But inside, nothing felt calm. Not anymore. Something had changed. And deep down, Al knew this wasn't just about a compliment. This was the beginning of something unexpected. Something complicated. Something that wasn't going to stay quiet for long. The rest of the night moved like slow motion for Al. He tried to focus on the movie, tried to laugh when Emily laughed, tried to act like nothing was wrong. But under his calm face, his mind was racing. He kept catching Mark's glance, quick, unreadable, but never random. There was something calculated in it, something layered. Every time Al looked away, he could still feel those eyes on him. Not aggressive, not obvious, but steady. And that made it worse. Emily had no clue. She sat between them now, curled up in a blanket, chatting about her day at work. Her voice brought life back into the room, but even that couldn't wash away the strange tension. Mark was quiet. Too quiet. He'd usually make a joke or toss in a sarcastic comment. But tonight, he just listened, nodded, gave small smiles. It wasn't like him. And that only made the weight in Al's chest feel heavier. Dana came back down eventually, still laughing from her phone call, and sat beside Al. She leaned in, her hand resting on his thigh, familiar and warm. "Did I miss anything?" she asked. Al shook his head. Not really. Just the usual suspense. He wasn't just talking about the movie. Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed, Al stood in the kitchen, sipping water in the dim light. The house was quiet. Almost too quiet. His mind couldn't let go of Mark's tone, the look in his eyes. He tried to tell himself it didn't mean anything, that maybe Mark was just being weird. But deep down, it didn't feel like a misunderstanding. It felt intentional. That's when the back porch door opened. Light footsteps. Mark. Al didn't turn right away. He kept his eyes on the sink window, watching his reflection in the glass. Couldn't sleep either? Mark said casually, stepping inside. Al finally turned. Yeah, just thinking. Mark leaned against the counter a few feet away. The space between them was thick with silence again. You looked upset earlier, Mark said. I hope I didn't say something wrong. Al narrowed his eyes. You know what you said. Mark gave a soft smile. I said you looked beautiful tonight. I meant it. That's not wrong, is it? Al didn't answer. He didn't know how to. He should have shut it down, told him to stop. But instead, he stood there, stuck in the moment, unsure of what this was turning into. Was it just curiosity? A game? Or something deeper that neither of them was ready to admit? Then Mark stepped closer. Not close enough to touch, but close enough to be noticed. You ever think about things that don't fit the usual picture? He asked, his voice quieter now. Things that aren't supposed to happen but still feel real? Al swallowed hard, his pulse ticking at his throat. The air felt warmer now. Or maybe it was just him. I don't know what you're trying to do, Al said, voice lower than before. Mark shrugged lightly. I'm just being honest. Al didn't respond. He didn't move either. The silence between them said more than words could. Something had shifted. A door had opened, and neither of them had closed it. The clock ticked past midnight. Al stood still in the kitchen, the silence pressing in from every wall. Mark hadn't moved much, but his presence was loud in the quiet room, steady, calm, yet full of something Al couldn't name. The words kept circling in his head, things that aren't supposed to happen but still feel real. That wasn't a passing comment. It was a challenge. A confession. Maybe both. A soft creak upstairs broke the silence for a moment, Dana turning in bed. Al's mind flashed to her, to Emily sleeping in the guest room down the hall, and then back to the man standing across from him. Everything in his life had always followed the rules, the expected paths. But right now, in this dim kitchen, nothing felt familiar anymore. The house was the same, the furniture in place, but the energy inside it had shifted, charged, unpredictable. Mark stepped away from the counter and slowly moved toward the sink, only a few feet from Al now. He wasn't doing anything overt, yet every step added pressure, like something building beneath the surface. His voice was lower this time, barely above a whisper. "You ever wonder how different things might be if we stopped pretending?" Mark asked. Al felt his breath catch for just a second. There was no room left for pretending now. The tension was too thick. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a line drawn in the quiet, waiting to be crossed or walked away from. But then came the sound that made both of them freeze. Footsteps. Soft, slow, and coming down the stairs. Al quickly stepped back, reaching for his glass as if that had been his only reason for standing there. Mark shifted too, just slightly, posture neutral again. The moment had shattered, but the heat of it still lingered. Emily appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes, her voice sleepy. "Everything okay down here?" Al turned, forcing a light tone. "Yeah, just getting some water." Mark gave her a small smile. "Didn't mean to wake you." She nodded, glanced at both of them, then said, "I couldn't sleep. The TV's still on." "You coming back up soon, Dad?" Al hesitated just a second too long before answering. "Yeah, I'll be up in a minute." She yawned and turned away, disappearing back up the stairs. When Al looked back at Mark, the man was already watching him again. No smile this time, just that same quiet intensity that promised this wasn't over. The house was quiet again, but the silence no longer brought peace. It felt like a thread stretched too tight, ready to snap with the slightest pull. Al stood in the dark kitchen long after Emily had gone upstairs. Mark hadn't said another word, but the air between them still buzzed with the weight of everything unspoken. Al finally moved, brushing past him without eye contact, pretending the moment had ended. But deep down, he knew it hadn't. It had only shifted. He went upstairs, heart still unsteady, and climbed into bed next to Dana. She was half asleep, her breathing slow and steady, unaware of what had just unfolded downstairs. Al lay there with his eyes open, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of it all. He'd spent years believing he knew his family, knew his place in it. But now, that belief was starting to crack. Morning came too fast. The usual sounds filled the house, coffee brewing, water running, footsteps across the floor. But everything felt off. Al sat at the table with his mug, trying to shake the tension that still clung to him. Then Dana walked in, phone in hand, a strange look on her face. "Hey," she said slowly, eyes not leaving the screen. "Did you get this message from Emily?" Al blinked. "What message?" Dana handed him the phone. On the screen was a blurry photo, taken from upstairs. In it, two figures stood in the kitchen last night. One near the sink, one by the counter. It was Al and Mark. The timestamp was clear. 12:42 a.m. Al's stomach dropped. "She sent it to both of us this morning," Dana added, her voice tight now. "She said she got up to go to the bathroom and noticed you two talking, or whatever that was." Al stared at the photo. It wasn't incriminating in itself, no touch, no words, no proof. But the way they were standing, the tension could be felt even in that grainy image. It said something was happening, even if it wasn't clear what. Before he could speak, Emily came into the kitchen, eyes calm but knowing. "I wasn't spying," she said. "I just noticed the vibe was weird last night." Dana looked between them, waiting. Mark entered seconds later, grabbing a glass of water like nothing was wrong. But the way his eyes met Al's, sharp, unreadable, it was clear. He knew about the photo. He knew the clock had started ticking. Emily turned to him. "So, is someone gonna explain what's going on, or do we keep pretending everything's fine?" Al opened his mouth, but nothing came out. This wasn't just awkward tension anymore. It was exposure. Suspicion. And now, with Dana and Emily both watching, the quiet secret that had been growing in the shadows was about to face the light. Al sat frozen at the kitchen table, still holding Dana's phone as the tension spread like smoke through the room. Emily's question hung in the air. Is someone gonna explain what's going on? Mark didn't flinch. He walked over to the counter, poured himself a glass of water, then turned calmly toward them all. I'll explain, he said, voice steady. But you might not like the answer. Dana crossed her arms, her expression sharp now. Then say it. Because whatever this is, it's not normal. Mark's gaze drifted to Al, locking eyes for a second. I didn't mean for anything to happen. I didn't plan it. But I noticed something about him, something different. He paused. Something honest. Emily scoffed. What's that supposed to mean? Al finally spoke. It means we crossed a line without even knowing where it started. Dana's face shifted, part disbelief, part confusion. You? What line? Al stood, setting the phone down, trying to keep his voice calm. Nothing happened. Not physically. But the thoughts were there. The tension. It wasn't one-sided. The room fell into a heavy silence. Emily looked stunned. Dana looked betrayed. Mark stepped forward, but Al held a hand up. Don't. Just let me speak. He turned to Dana. I don't know why it happened. Maybe I was bored. Maybe I was restless. Maybe I saw something in him I didn't understand, but it made me question everything. And I didn't stop it when I should have. Dana's eyes watered, but she didn't cry. She just stared at him, speechless. And then, out of nowhere, Emily said, I already knew. They all turned to her. I saw the way you looked at each other last month. In the backyard. I didn't say anything because, honestly, I wasn't sure I wanted to know. Al sat down again, overwhelmed. Mark looked down. No one spoke for a moment. Then Dana finally exhaled. So what happens now? Before anyone could answer, there was a ding, a new message alert on Al's phone. He picked it up. It was from an unknown number. Just a photo. Of him and Mark. At the hardware store. Weeks ago. Smiling. Talking closely. Then another message. Thought you should know. Secrets don't stay buried long. VIP hook. Everyone looked at each other. Emily broke the silence. Who the hell is VIP hook? But Al already knew. This wasn't over. The message from VIP hook changed everything. The room, already tense from confessions, now stood on the edge of something even bigger, exposure. Al stared at the image, one he hadn't even realized was taken, and felt the weight of all his choices land on his chest at once. Dana reached for the phone, and when she saw it, she didn't say a word. She just nodded slowly, as if everything now made sense. Emily looked confused but alert. Mark stepped forward. Who is that? How did they get that photo? Al shook his head. I don't know. But someone's been watching. It was true. What had started as quiet tension between two people had now pulled in the whole family, and even someone on the outside. VIP Hook wasn't just a name. It was a threat. A reminder that secrets, once whispered, don't stay quiet forever. That afternoon, the family sat down, this time, not in confrontation, but in honest conversation. Al apologized, not just for the way things unfolded, but for not stopping it earlier. Dana, though hurt, appreciated the honesty. Emily confessed she'd felt tension in the house for weeks, but didn't know how to speak up. Mark admitted his feelings were confused. What started as admiration had turned into something more complicated than he'd ever expected. They decided, for now, to take a step back. No accusations, no more hiding. Just space. Al and Dana agreed to spend some time apart, just enough to reflect. Mark moved into a short-term rental, promising to give everyone distance. Emily stayed at the house with Dana, keeping things grounded. As for VIP Hook, the number was eventually traced back to an anonymous online profile, one that had been watching Al through a luxury forum he'd been casually active on. Nothing criminal, just someone who had taken an unusual interest in family dynamics and snapped a few public photos. Creepy, yes. Illegal, no. Still, it was enough to remind them all, privacy is fragile. Especially when emotions cross boundaries. Weeks passed. Al focused on work, therapy, and rebuilding trust. Dana, while still cautious, began speaking to him regularly again. Emily kept things peaceful, avoiding drama. Mark sent a letter one day, not asking for forgiveness, just explaining that he, too, had grown up in a house full of quiet disappointments, and that maybe that's why he'd crossed a line he didn't fully understand. In the end, they all walked away from the experience changed. No explosions. No perfect closure. Just real people dealing with the fallout of temptation, connection, and choices. And maybe that's all anyone can ask for: clarity eventually. What do you think of this ending? Should there be a sequel? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you want more stories like this.